Hello, hello. Today is July 23rd, which apparently, if I am correct in what little astrology knowledge I have, is Leo season. So, Leos rejoice. Your birthdays are coming up. Pop off, kings and queens. Not an astrology expert, though, so don't quote me on that. Anyways, let's get on to the final part of basically kind of, I guess, my life as of this point right now. As of right now, I should have completed my second year of undergraduate, and to stop the anonymous identity of wherever I was going, I actually am currently attending school at University of California, San Diego, and where I live right now is probably about 400, 500 miles away, currently in the Bay Area, so yeah. I spent about most of my undergrad there until, of course, the pandemic hit. Then the last term I actually spent back here at home. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So when I first was kind of getting ready to go, I did post like an introductory post about who I was. Didn't really know like what it would lead to, because ultimately it didn't really lead to much, honestly, because most of the people that did see my posts, I rarely ever saw them in person. And while I did try to get to know people who were going to be there, again, most people I didn't really see on campus. So I was kind of going at it by myself, except with maybe one or two high school friends. But maybe I'll talk about them one day, since I did foster a particularly close relationship with one of them, but I want to kind of voice my own thoughts about it rather than list all the events that kind of happened, because for the sake of their identity, I do want to at least try to keep them as anonymous as possible in case like any internet trolls or flamers are going to attack this person, and I'd rather not want that because I still do have a good relationship with them, but I'll get to it later. Anyways, besides those people, I really didn't know anyone, and I was actually going to triple mainly because though having a room all to myself sounds nice, I would like to have, I guess, some company to start off with, especially considering that I was also particularly fine with having a roommate since I was basically my brother's roommate for most of his life. So, didn't really see what the problem was, though having three people, now that I look back at it, did make things a bit crowded. And truth be told, I didn't really contact either of my roommates since I didn't really know either of them, like how to contact them besides like their phone numbers, and felt that was a bit too invasive. Though, apparently, as I found out much later, one of my roommates actually sent me a request right before school started, so could have had that contact. Because I think I did. I wasn't sure if I added them or not, but we never really talked until we first met in person. And as it turned out, the roommate who did add me actually did see my post and thought I was a complete weirdo. So, whoops. That was an interesting first impression. But when I did move down there, I did have to drive down since I'd bring down most of my stuff, and I didn't have enough luggage, like suitcases and stuff, to really fly down there. So so my dad basically drove me and my mom down so we could all just unpack. And I was living in like a little suite area with probably about 9 or 10 other people. As it turns out, actually, one of the rooms that was supposed to be a triple ended up being a double. So we had a bit less people than what most suites had at our time, at least. And the first week was actually basically an orientation week before classes actually started. So basically it was just a time for everyone to kind of get to know whoever is like living next door. And I think for the first week, I'm pretty sure most people actually end up going to our suite. I don't know if this is like just some coincidence or whatever, but I was honestly fine with it since I was able to meet new people, see what kind of people I'd probably vibe with the most. And I definitely saw a pretty big variety in probably only about 30, 40 people that I only saw just meeting there. And of all the people I was most comfortable with, I was actually most comfortable with my roommates. Mainly because we had very similar interests, but also it was nice to know that even though those similar interests did kind of confuse both of us, like one of our roommates would call me my other roommate, or the other way around because of our similar interests in a way. But also we were able to kind of talk about subtle differences in our interests, like whatever video game genre we liked or what anime we were watching right now. It was nice getting close with them, and also I did confide with them a lot more because I kind of wanted to learn how to really, I guess, trust other people with some of my other thoughts. And I will admit, I did kind of take advantage of it at some point because it did overwhelm my roommate, especially with whatever he had going on in his life and whatever other people were doing or telling him. So I kind of had to realize where my boundaries were with, like, do I really need to tell him, or is it something I can handle on my own? Because I have realized that some of the problems that I've had in my head, I've been able to recognize them just fine on my own, oddly enough. And while they might not necessarily be resolved as easily, because they are very recurring problems, they are things that I realize I should not put as much weight as I have been at my worst. So I'm glad for him for that. There was also another close friend of mine who, while he, I guess, was very dominant in a conversation, it was kind of just nice, kind of taking a back seat so I didn't have to, like, be forced to, like, unload whatever was on my mind, because chances are I would probably be a bit negative at the time. I think a few other things that have happened during my first term there were me joining a few clubs. I jumped around to things that I was at least interested in that wasn't completely involved with what career path I was going into. I was thinking about working somewhere in the health field, so maybe like a doctor or whatever other jobs are kind of out there. But ultimately, I think the club that wasn't completely related to what field I would like to work in after graduating is a Catholic club that I found while I was actually attending a mass. It was on campus, and though I didn't really get super close to most of the people there at first, after mass was over, they had a little barbecue. So during that barbecue, I was actually talking with quite a few people about this one club called Kyrie Eleison, which was a pretty social club for, I guess, a religious affiliated club that honestly I was kind of interested in because I wasn't 100% sure at the time if I wanted to continue my faith in Catholicism. But after talking with those students of their experiences so far, I was definitely hooked. And though I wasn't there for like the very first events, I did try to come to every single GBM, even if I barely knew anyone there actually. But eventually, after a quarter or so, I did become a bit more familiar after kind of finally breaking out of my shell and kind of being able to see them around a bit more. I did think that hopefully I would be able to spend a good amount of time with this club. There were definitely other clubs that I was a bit more involved in, though I think this career definitely stuck with me a bit more because I did start with it right off the bat, like the very first moment I entered into college. So that was nice. I think one other big event that did happen during my first year was I actually was in my first relationship. You remember one of my close friends in high school? Yeah, I did develop feelings for her, and I figured, well, after spending a couple months with her and kind of thinking about, do I want to consider her as a romantic partner, stuff like that. I don't know. There was a lot going on in my mind in regards to her. then and sometimes even now, did feel like I would like to give myself a shot. And though things were a bit complicated, and that's kind of a story for another time, and I'm not sure if I would be able to tell this story, we did end up starting a relationship that lasted for quite a while, actually. And I think those are the main things that kind of happened during first year, except those were only probably the pretty good things. I think one thing that did happen during my first year that realized was a pretty recurring problem was that I did not really know what the hell I was doing in college. I knew I wanted to study in a field of science because obviously if you want to be prepared to enter the health field, you do need to know quite a bit about like science and stuff. But more than just taking classes about science, there were people who were doing other things, like some people had jobs, some people were working in research labs and stuff, because at San Diego, it was a research university, so there were quite a lot of labs doing all kinds of research. And while that sounded interesting, I really didn't know what kind of research I really wanted to go into. Mainly because there was just so much stuff, and I probably had like analysis paralysis. I think that's the term. Like, I really didn't know what I wanted to study, even though most of my friends, or a good amount of my friends, during their first years actually found a lab. Now, I know that they definitely did do their hardest to at least try to pitch themselves out there as a viable candidate, or I don't know, because I know that they were particularly stressed about kind of, some of them at least, some of them were particularly stressed about kind of applying for labs and whatever. I don't want to sound like I'm disregarding them, but I do have some negative feelings towards people who are working in labs, but I'd say most of those feelings are attributed to envy that they're in a lab and I'm not yet, rather than they didn't deserve to be working in the lab. Because it's not like it was a competition to apply to any lab or anything. I don't know. I definitely had a lot of issues with whether or not I was particularly competent or not. And while I did acknowledge them for a while, I never really did anything to kind of, I guess, resolve them in a way. Especially with, like, working in the lab, since it just seems so commonplace, I guess. Second year came around, though, and now there were people who were a bit younger, so I guess for some reason, uh, did try to get close with some of the younger students, I guess the first years. And coursework definitely got significantly tougher, I will say that right now. UCSD is actually running on a quarter term system, so basically the terms last, say, 10, 11 weeks, rather than a semester system which would last about 18 weeks. That's kind of a ballpark estimate, because it does depend on each university or college that you go to, but that's just to give you kind of a rough idea. Second year, though, I do remember trying to spend a good amount of time at least getting to know some of the first years at the time, because I would see them for probably a good amount of time, since I do plan on staying at campus for about 4 years. And while I did try to shoot my shot with more opportunities, I think more often than not I definitely got a few rejections on my way, and that definitely demoralized me a bit, especially considering that I didn't really feel like I was good enough for, well, anything on campus besides like studying and stuff. Definitely hurt a bit, especially for my confidence. And the more I realized that so many issues, especially with like not knowing what I want to do, because I really wasn't sure if I was cut out to really be a doctor or not, because you have to do so much preparation just to have a chance to enter medical school after graduating, that I just really wasn't sure that I was cut out to be able to do it in just a few years. And also the fact that I wasn't able to really achieve any of those opportunities or put in that preparation just really hurt my confidence quite a bit. Eventually, though, that relationship that I was in, after realizing that kind of my issues, I did tell my partner, but also kind of felt like it did overwhelm her quite a bit, and realizing that I felt I really needed to just resolve all of these on my own, and that I really just didn't think I could handle the responsibilities of maintaining a relationship, I did have to break off the relationship. And I will admit I was kind of a coward because I don't really feel like I knew how it affected her as much as it affected me, because, don't get me wrong, as much as I knew that what I was doing I hoped would be for the long term, I also knew that it would basically hurt me a bit, because I was definitely cutting a pretty intimate tie with a very close friend that I had, and I really wasn't sure if I was deserving of being able to really repair that relationship, even just as friends or not. But regardless, I still do see her in good terms, because regardless of whether or not she was my friend or my romantic partner, she was always very willing to offer a listening ear. It's just that I wish I was able to really do the same for her sometimes. And then the pandemic hit, where basically everywhere in California, everyone was mandated to enter the shelter in place. So I did the most logical thing, since I didn't really have any reason to stay in San Diego, and decided to call up my parents to tell them that I would like to go back home. I am extremely grateful for their response, because they almost immediately rented a car. Like, I texted them the night before, and then the moment I woke up the next morning, they were already heading down. So I was pretty surprised about that, let's just say. I thought that was pretty crazy, actually, just to see their reaction. And while it was kind of stressful to kind of pack up most things, I kind of knew that things were not going to be the same. I had that feeling, but I didn't really know how. For the next quarter, or basically just the last few months, I want to say, because it already is like July, most of July has already passed. But I was in school still from about April to probably the first half of June. And I thought I would be fine, because I thought I was prepared enough to, I don't know, do online learning. Looking back, I clearly was not. I definitely could have prepared a bit more, but also I was at least doing my best to catch up with work, while also not trying to completely isolate myself, because although I was with my family, I wasn't really close enough with them to just kind of confide anything with them. And also wasn't really pursuing any extra opportunities outside of it besides a board position that I found in one of the organizations I joined pretty recently. But besides all that, I knew that a part of me just really wanted to just be alone, because, truth be told, my house is pretty small, and I was still sharing my room with my brother when I got back. So when I got back, I very rarely had like a space for myself to really just be by myself. And I feel like that kind of took a pretty big toll on me, mainly because I would always have to hear some background noise of wherever I would be, whether it be my parents and my grandparents just, I don't know, talking or yelling at each other, or my brother playing video games with his friends. I don't know, I definitely felt like that even though I never had that space, I just thought it would be easier just to isolate myself in my own mind. And I will admit, there were times where I wanted to break pretty badly, and I probably did several times in the later parts of the quarter. I think the worst of it, though, was during a presentation I was giving where I basically tried to put on an act of what my whole quarter was like, and then my emotions just kind of took control over there at that point. I basically confided with whatever class it was that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't feel like I was good enough for anything or anyone. And all I just wanted to do was just be alone, because that's all I kind of just felt throughout the whole quarter. It kind of sucked, because though I was spending a good part of the week, whether it be like just a few hours with whoever would be able to, I don't know, just talk and stuff, it kind of made me feel like I'm just discrediting those times. Because I felt like those are only times where I would only feel happy just for a certain moment, but not really work at it to improve my emotional state and I guess my mental state as well. And after that incident, I kind of just wanted to resolve to myself to spend this summer to just establish like a routine for myself where I would at least put in some effort to, I don't know, just go out and exercise, not have to worry too much about my future, and kind of take a step back to see beyond that I'm someone who is, I guess, good enough, even though I've let opportunities slip past constantly. And so that's the main reason why I kind of started this, one of the main reasons at least why I started this video journal. Because I wanted to at least establish a routine for myself to show that I am able to put in the effort to do something that I want to do. Even if it doesn't benefit anyone else, it does benefit me in a way that not only benefits me, I guess, physically, but also mentally, and I guess does raise my self-confidence a bit more. So that's basically more or less my kind of thoughts about the first 2 years of college. Just a lot of growth and still trying to work out this ongoing issue of what I want to do. I think there is still the possibility of me trying to go to medical school, but also I am a little bit more interested in possibly becoming a physician's assistant. I don't know, the prospect of spending a bit less time in school, which would also mean having less loans after school, and also entering the workforce a bit sooner, just sounds pretty nice, honestly. And not to mention, I still am at least interested in the field that I'm studying right now, which is biology, but I still have a lot to learn, honestly, in terms of that. I've only gone down to the surface level stuff in all my lower division classes, and I've only just started kind of learning a bit more deeper in the upper division classes. And so that is probably where my past ends for now. For the next few days or so, I think I will definitely start talking about things that have probably kept me up at night for several days, if not months or even years. Because I'm going to be honest, even if I try to force myself to sleep at a certain time, it does take me a while to get back into that sleep, because there are nights where I just spend just thinking about things that kind of basically have kept me up all night and probably plagues me all day as well sometimes. But hopefully I can be able to bring up those sensitive topics to myself and to y'all. So I think I will end off today's journal here. I will see you tomorrow for whatever topic ever comes up in my head. Bye.